Hello and welcome everyone to the Alpha NRL tier list series where I'm going to be ranking all things NRL over this past 2021 season. In today's video, we're going to be specifically looking at the NRL coaches over this past year. These rankings will be heavily weighed towards their performances this year, but we'll also factor in some of their past resume as well. So to start things off, guys, we've got Josh Hannay from the Cronulla Sharks, obviously the caretaker manager at the moment. I don't think he's done a bad job, only one spot below Josh Morris last season with the same level of talent. I'm going to put him in the average tier, purely because he hasn't had much chance to prove himself with just one season in the NRL. And next up, for the West Tigers, we've got Michael Maguire. Now, I'm a very beloved Tigers fan, so I'm going to put him in average. Only because the Tigers have dipped in the last few seasons, and I honestly don't put that all down to Madge. I back Madge as a Tigers fan. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the talent to coach an excellent team. And to coach a team into the finals. I honestly don't think they should be in the finals with the players in the team at the moment. He's been given a recovery job basically since Ivan Cleary left the mess. And I think over this next year to 2 years is when we're going to definitely see how good he really is. I haven't put him in not good enough purely because of his past experience. Obviously a premiership winner, an international coach with the Kiwis. Yeah, this season was not good enough, but considering his past performances and the circumstances, I've put him in average. And next up, guys, we've got Wayne Bennett, the godfather of NRL coaching, really. Now, with this tier list mostly weighing towards the 2021 season, I'm going to put him in excellent. He's had some great previous years as a coach. He's obviously historic as an NRL coach, but this year hasn't been amazing, outstanding, I should say, but he's one of the better coaches in the NRL, that's for sure. So that's why I've got him in the excellent tier. He's got a 63.8% win percentage with the Rabbitohs, which is just good stuff. I was going to say excellent for the 8th time, but yeah, it's good stuff. Next up, we've got Trent Robinson. Now, with the Roosters not in that top 4, it might be easy to say he's had an above average year, but you have to consider those injuries. They have been terrible for the Sydney Roosters. And you also factor in some of those past years with 3 premierships as a Roosters coach. I'm going to put him in the excellent tier as well. Trent Robinson, to me, is one of the better coaches. Also, he's very likable. He's a guy that has stuck up for his players. Of course, he has the privilege of Mr. Politis paying off his fines, I'm guessing. But no, he's a great coach. A very smart man. A big respect from Mr. Kai, I must say. He's really kept that Sydney Roosters team afloat this year when they could have definitely fallen out of the finals picture, much like the Raiders have, considering their injury woes. He's relied on younger players, fill-in players. He's just done a great job as a Sydney Roosters coach this year. Now, next up, guys, we've got Todd Payten. Now, this is going to be our first one in not good enough. Todd Payten has not been good enough. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, they don't really have any personality, any structure within that team. You watch that team and sometimes they are pretty good, but most of the times they're lost. There are talented individuals on that team. I think they need some more strength in their forward pack. They've got some decent half. I mean, Dearden, he's still growing. Drinkwater, he's very inconsistent. Valentine Holmes has struggled with injury this year as well. It hasn't been ideal for the Cowboys in terms of situations and circumstances, but he really hasn't been good enough. They were expecting him to put in a strong first year, considering how well he did with the Warriors and their circumstances last year. Unfortunately, he just has not been good enough. And next up, for the New Zealand Warriors, it's the man that took Todd Payten's place, actually. It's Nathan Brown. I put him in average. He hasn't had a bad season. I don't think many coaches could have done more with that team at the Warriors. Honestly, I think he's the biggest coup, and I don't know how much responsibility he's had this year. The biggest positive was getting Reece Walsh, I reckon. That's a franchise-turning player. Nathan Brown, he didn't have much choice, really. There's a lot of injuries, a lot of COVID issues, suspensions, all this stuff. It just hasn't been a great season for the Warriors. And I think they have placed where people would have expected him to place, considering the circumstances. I don't think Nathan Brown's a bad coach at all. I just think he's average. And at this point, hopefully for the Warriors' sake, things clear up and they can start playing at Mount Smart again, because they definitely need it for their fans, their club, and just to get some normality, to see how good that roster really is. And for the Gold Coast Titans, we have Justin Holbrook. Now, if you asked me this question about 3 weeks ago when they're outside the finals chase, I would have put him in average or maybe not good enough. But considering they made the finals, you think about that turnaround that they had last year in last place, I think, or second last place, and that turnaround where they got into 9th and just missed the finals. Holbrook's come in with a vision, and I feel like he's definitely achieved that vision so far. This season was a bit of a disappointment, but you think about it, where were the Titans going to place any higher than 7th? I don't think anyone could see that really. So just slipping into the 8th, even though it wasn't a great season, it's probably one of the lowest win-loss percentages from an 8th seed in NRL history. It has to be close, because I'm pretty sure that there were 3-4 wins under 500. But Justin Holbrook's done a good job. He slipped in the Titans on the final round, and I think that was his job description at the start of the year. Nothing to complain about there if you're a Titans fan. I think he's been above average. He's got some great signings in there. They play expansive, almost touch footy style footy. The one thing they are struggling with so far is defense, and that's going to be his next step. I've only just put him in the above average tier here, considering where they finished. If they struggle with defense next year, he could come back down here. But for 2021 and some of that 2020 season that he had, he's turned the club around. It's easy to forget how bad the Titans were just 2 seasons ago. And next up, guys, we have Adam O'Brien. Well, the Knights have really been up and down this year, but did we expect more? 7th place, I think he's been above average. They could have easily slipped down. They were out of the finals hunt for a bit in 2021. They have heavily reliant on Mitchell Pearce, Kalen Ponga, Brayley, and Frizzell, I'd say, are probably their biggest players at the moment. When those guys aren't in the team, they do struggle a lot. But look, I think he's done what was expected of him. There was high pressures on him earlier in the year, but he's done enough. He's been above average. It's the same vibes as Justin Holbrook. They've done just a bit more than enough, got them into the finals, and I'd probably, if they finish 9th, I'd probably put them average, but they finished 7th, and you didn't expect them to finish much higher than that. So for O'Brien, he's done enough. He's above average for me. Of course, just my opinion again. Put your opinions down below in the comments. I'll be responding to some of them. Let's go into the next coach, and our next coach here, guys, is Anthony Griffin. Now, Griffin I'm going to put him in the average tier. I don't think he's done a bad job. The Dragons are a bit of a mess at the moment in terms of recruitment. They're not really even sure who they want to keep, who they want to bring through the systems there. And also, they had the COVID issues, players suspended, a lot of things going wrong. If we think back to midway through this year, the Dragons were in the 8. I think they might have been in the top 6 at some point. And that was before all the things started to unravel. So I think Griffin is a decent coach. He's showed in the past that he can get his teams into the top 8 with ease, I'd say. So look, hopefully for Dragons fans, there are some better things to come. This year was a disappointment, but I wouldn't say he wasn't good enough. There was a lot of circumstances as well. A bit like Nathan Brown, honestly. There's not much I felt like he could have done there to save their season as the coach of the St. George Dragons. And some would say the GOAT, and it's our next coach. It's Craig Bellamy, the Melbourne Storm coach. Now, I'm thinking in alpha tier. Craig Bellamy is, to me, the greatest coach of all time, but obviously I'm from this era. But from what coaches I've seen and watched, the way he's able to adapt to get the most out of his players, to keep them accountable, and keep this regime going in Melbourne, where it's not even a footy city, but he just keeps a team that, in the wrong hands could easily flounder, but they've just done great down there in Melbourne, and Craig Bellamy has to be given a lot of props for that. They've obviously signed him to that new deal. A lot of us would have said a couple years ago when the rules changed into this quicker game that the Melbourne Storm would struggle because they were known for their wrestling tactics, but they've just adapted, they've evolved, and they've evolved better than any other club, considering they were probably the reason why the NRL put these new rules in. They're just unstoppable. There's just a constant supply of young players coming in. Excellent depth at that club. Him and his recruitment team have definitely sorted that team out very well. The Melbourne Storm look healthy and are my tip for the premiership this year. Great stuff from Craig Bellamy, a good bloke. And he just gets the best out of his play. That's what I love about him the most. Now, next up, we've got Kevy Walters, who I'm going to be putting in the average tier again. Now, Kevy Walters, to me, really struggled towards the start of the year. And honestly, there were some talks of him being out the door at mid-season, but he's really turned it around. I feel like they've got rid of some of that dead weight. He figured it out with Albert Kelly and Tyson Gamble in the halves, which I think was a strong decision there. They were really struggling with Croft and Milford. There are definitely some question marks, getting rid of all their their hookers and just having Turpin to start the year and then they're having to get Levi to fill in. It was a bit weird. I don't think he may be the best tactical manager, but if he can get the players on his side, they're a very young team. They're not expected to make the top 8, I don't think, anytime soon. But if they can just put some productive footy out, which they have been towards the end of this year, you're able to watch them at the moment. They are viewable. At the start of the year, it was hard to watch the Broncos. I would think, damn, it must suck to be a Broncos fan. But Walters has turned things around. I think he's having an average year. Of course, they would love to be higher on the ladder, but I don't think he's been necessarily totally poor. And we've got 5 coaches left to go. Our next coach is Brad Arthur. I'm going to put him in the above average tier. I think he gets a lot of stick that is not necessarily warranted. I think he does the best with that team, and he's definitely turned that club around. The 2021 season hasn't been perfect for the Eels. They obviously would have loved to finish in the top 4, but I don't think they were terrible. They had a bit of a low point towards the middle to end of this year, but if they can get to a preliminary finals, I think it'll be a great season for the Eels. I think that's their peak, unless they go on a really, really hot streak of form. But to me, Brad Arthur hasn't been bad. He's not an average coach. He's definitely an above average coach. Next up, we've got Trent Barrett. And I'm going to put this guy in not good enough again. The Bulldogs just played such poor footy for such a long time this year. I wasn't expecting them to make a top 8. But I would have hoped they would have at least come 13th to 11th. Maybe, but they just even put on enough play. And I don't think their team is not skilled enough. Really, I think their team is skilled enough to be at least 13th, right? You compare them to the West Tigers team at the moment. I mean, is there much difference? I don't know if there really is. I don't think he has been good enough, but I don't think he's a bad coach. I think with the talent being brought in next year, there are definitely hopes. I think slim hopes for finals next year, but I think definitely that 10th, 11th spot. I definitely didn't expect them to be last yet again, though, which is very unfortunate for the Bulldogs. Now, this one may be a bit controversial with Ivan Cleary. Now, guys, you have to understand that Ivan Cleary has a 71.9% win percentage as a coach. He's done well so far. Yes, he hasn't won a premiership, but I'm going to put him in the excellent tier. Look, if we're looking at the 2021 season, which we are right now, I think he's navigated the season so far. There are injuries to key players. They do look like I'm not going to lie, they do look like a very different side without Nathan Cleary. And it would be interesting to see how the Panthers would go without Nathan Cleary and see how Ivan Cleary can manage that team. I think that would be a real test of how good a coach he really is. They navigated the New South Wales Origin period pretty well with a lot of players going to play in the Origin. I think he's done a good job. And if they make the finals again this year, look, you can't complain. He just isn't at that alpha tier, of course, because his resume just isn't there. And he's not in that above average tier because you look at the guys below him, they haven't had the success, the winning percentage, or have even reached the finals as a coach. So, yeah, to me, definitely Ivan Cleary is an excellent head coach and deserves to be on the same tier as those other two dudes. I'm not saying he's better than those guys, but in that same level. Definitely in that same level to me. Next up, we've got Des Hasler. Now, you could really put him anywhere. Not anywhere. I think you could put him anywhere from above average to alpha. You think about his resume, absolutely outstanding. But I think about his coaching ability without Tom Trbojevic. And then you want to start putting him into there. And then you think about how good they were and they made the top 4. And then you want to start putting him into here. So, for me, if you're considering his former... Look, they had a great season, the Manly Seagulls, but they also have the best player in the game at the moment. And is that his fault that he coaches that guy? Of course not. But they really struggled without him towards the start of this season. They were one of the worst teams in the NRL. I'm going to put him in above average. You know what? Actually, I think I'm going to change it. I'm going to put him in excellent. Now, it's hard to put Des Hasler in excellent considering how bad they were at the start of the year. But I'd say I'm weighing this about 80% of this year and 20% of their past achievements. Des Hasler is an outstanding coach that has won premierships in the past. He was probably one of the best coaches I'd say the best coach in the game at one point in this past decade. But at the moment, I don't know. I think they're really good offensively in attack and they're really good defensively with Tom Trbojevic. But without him, they really do seem to struggle. I don't know. They're very handicapped in terms of salary. I know they don't have many players they can sign. They're pretty constricted with the Daly Cherry Evans contract and the two Trbojevic's contracts. So there isn't much movement that they can use there. I think they're peaking as a team in fourth spot and really benefiting from one of the best form years we've ever seen in the NRL from Trbojevic. I think he's got to be in the excellent tier. If you're going to put Ivan Cleary in there, you definitely have to put Des Hasler in there. And our last coach is Ricky Stewart. Now, Ricky Stewart has had a pretty terrible year. You see him in the press conferences. He's a sad man. He's down on his luck. He's down bad. Now, if we were only considering the 2021 season, it's not been good enough. Let's be honest. It really hasn't been good enough. But you consider his past performances, how he's turned that Canberra club around. I can't put him in average considering some of the names here and how poorly they've played. They also did have injuries. I mean, many clubs did have injuries this year. But I'm going to put Ricky Stewart above average. Just think about his past years, how highly respected, I should say, he is as a coach. And I think this is just one bad year for the Raiders. I do expect them to be back in that finals picture next year. Hopefully for them, they can get some recruits in after they lost Williams. You have to remember that they lost Williams midway through the year. They've lost Bateman just last year as well. All these combinations of things are reasons why the Raiders really struggle this year. I don't think their position really classifies how good Stewart is as a coach, and that's why I've placed him in the above average tier. So guys, that is my NRL 2021 coaches tier list. Of course, this is just my silly opinion. Put your opinion down below in the comments. I'll be responding to some of them. Tell me the things that you would have changed. And don't forget that subscribe button and that like button. I'm going to be posting these tier list videos for the rest of the week. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow for the tier list for the media journalists in the NRL sphere.